Good afternoon, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of the Just Sean YouTube channel, y'all, where there's real talk, real life, and real people with true life experiences, man. I'm glad to have you guys back once again with me, man. I am so excited about what's to come and what's about to happen. Like I said, I've been revamping the show, getting things organized, getting more guest stars. It's about to go to a whole nother plateau, and I want you guys to be a part of this Just Sean movement. Now, I thank God for you subscribers, everybody that's tuned in. But I'm back, and I'm back pushing further more than ever and staying consistent in all that too. Today, y'all, I want to talk about something that's been on my heart. Today, I want to talk about, and I want y'all to hear this because it's important. I want everybody to hear this because it's something we all need to talk about. So today, I want to talk about: are we really fulfilling the call on earth? Are we really fulfilling what God has called us to do on earth? You know, we're all working our various jobs, we're all doing this, we're all doing that. But when God speaks to us or tell us to minister to somebody, or tell us to say something, are we truly doing what He's asking us to do? Or are we just doing what we want to do, what our flesh wants us to do? Are we doing exactly what He's telling us to do? Me, I have a security business, so I'm always in the limelight. I'm always in the bars in different places. Am I really speaking to them like God is telling me to speak to them? You know, are we really fulfilling the assignment that God has called upon our life? Are we really doing what God has called us to do in this earth? Or are we just existing? That's something we got to talk about. Are we really just existing? And I think the thing is that we sometimes may be worried about what folk may think. We may be worried about how it may come off. We don't want to seem weird, strange. We don't want to seem like we're not cool or we're not a part of the so-called crowd, the in crowd, or we don't want to be talked about. But when it comes to God speaking to you, however He tells you to speak, whatever He tells you to do, you do it. It's not about the crowd. It's not about what everybody thinks. It's not about what people think about you or how you feel, or you're intimidated to say this, you're intimidated to say this. If there's something that He's told you to do, then you say it. I think many times we worried about what people think and what they may say. That's why, and that's not a good thing, because what we're doing is we're forgetting about what He's telling us to do. We're forgetting about the assignment that He's called us to do, and we're worried about what other folk may think and where it may seem, and that's not cool. So that's a question that we can ask everybody, whether you're a truck driver, a teacher, or are you really fulfilling the call that God has for you on earth? Are we really fulfilling the call? Because it all starts at, when the preaching and everything starts out here, it starts at home. Are you really, when your friend walks up to you and he's going through a situation, he may not be, and God tells you to tell him one thing, do you tell him? That's the thing. Are we really fulfilling our God-given calling that He's given us? Are we ashamed of it? Are we not speaking to those who we're supposed to speak to? What are we doing? And that's a question that we all have to answer. Because living in this world with everything that's going on, we have to get to a place where we're not ashamed to share what He's put on our heart for that individual person. We have to get to a place to not be ashamed to speak out against what's right and what's wrong. We can't be ashamed. The world's not ashamed to do what they do, and the devil's not ashamed to do what he does. And why are we allowing ourselves to be intimidated by men? Why are we allowing ourselves to be intimidated by people and what they think? Because we're worried about what they may think of what comes out of our mouth. Oh, that may be creepy. That may be scary. You might not be my friend. You might not want to be my family. You might shun me. Don't none of that matter. Because when He has called you into a thing or to a place, or when He has told you something to say, you cannot be ashamed to say it. You cannot be. Because you're not fulfilling that God-given calling that He's put upon you and placed upon you in the earth. And I think sometimes we get intimidated. Sometimes we wrestle with this being able to speak those things that He tells us. We wrestle, and then we The blood is still in our hands because we didn't speak what we were supposed to speak to that person, or to that one, or to that group of people, or to that organization, whatever God has said. We as believers, we as Christians, we as people of God, people of faith, have to learn how to speak that thing. We have to learn how to do what he tells us to do. We have to. We have to learn how to walk into rooms and say things that people may not want to hear. We have to learn how to tell our family members things that we quite frankly probably don't want to tell them. But when you trust him and you know God and you hear him and you're following his virtues and precepts, you won't be ashamed of what people think. You won't care what they think. You won't worry about what they think. You won't worry about how it comes out, because however God tells you to say it, you're going to say it the way he tells you, and it's going to be very impactful. I'm telling you, I've had that issue before, wondering if I should tell this person when I know God has told me to say this. And it's been a group of people that I know I didn't want to say it, but when he told me to say it, I said it. But when I didn't say it, it wasn't right. Things happened. So we can't be ashamed to fulfill our God-given talent. Our God-given calling that God has placed upon us. We cannot be ashamed to speak what he tells us to speak. We cannot be ashamed to say what he tells us to say. We have to realize that we're set apart. We have to realize that we can't go certain places we used to. We can't do certain things we used to. That's the thing. We have to understand that, and we have to believe that, and we cannot be ashamed. Y'all, there's so much going on in the world right now that we have to get to a place where we trust God. We have to get to a place where we believe him. We have to get to a place where nothing by any means will stop us for believing what he has promised us, for what he has told us. And some of us are getting to a place where we can't fulfill our God-given assignment or what God has told us to do, because we're struggling with what other folk may think and what other folk may feel and how other folk may take us. We might not be cool enough. We might not be tough enough. We might cannot hang out with the in crowd. We have to get to a place and be able to spread his gospel and spread his word unashamedly. I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I ain't. But one thing I do know is when he speaks to me, I put it out there. When he speaks to me, I do what he tells me to do. Regardless. I'm doing this YouTube channel because it's not just for me. I'm doing it because this is something God has called me to do. And he's birthing something in me. And sometimes when God is birthing something in you, it ain't always easy. Sometimes when God is birthing something in you, it ain't always that easy. But what I'm telling you to do, when he's giving you an assignment, when he's called you and he's placed that calling upon your life, you cannot be ashamed. There's some of y'all out here that he's called you to preach. He's called you to do this, but you're stagnated. You're fretful. You're frightful. You're frustrated, and you can't do it because you're worried about men validating you. No longer do men have to validate you no more. God has called you, and you got to step out by faith. You have to step out there. You got to step out. I mean, you ain't gonna always fit in with everybody. You're not. You're not gonna always fit in with everybody. You're not gonna always be quote unquote what, say everything everybody wants to hear. Because that's not what God's called you to do. He didn't call you to please people. He didn't call you to not say his stuff, but say what you want. Sometimes we get in our flesh and we say what we want because we ain't ready to open up what God wants us to say to those people because you're worried about what they think. Stop. If there is a calling on your life that is placed on your life, you cannot be ashamed. You have to go forth with it. You have to move forward in it and what he's called you to do. You cannot allow people to back you up in the corner and make you feel less than, and make you feel that your calling is nothing, and make you feel like this is something you shouldn't do. No. God will direct you to say, God will direct the right people around you to help cultivate what he's put in you. Boy, that thing feels good, because I just went through this not too long ago. And I know for a fact that he's called me to preach. He's called me to do. He's called me to do that, and I cannot be ashamed. And I don't want you guys to be ashamed of what he's called you to do. I don't want you guys to be so bound up that you focus on everything else but what he's called you to do. You wonder why your life ain't going right. You wonder why this is happening. You wonder why this is happening because you're still putting other things before him, the job, everything else, and what he's called you to do. Whatever God's called you to do, He's going to make sure you do it. Because you're called to do it. It's in you to do it. It's flowing through your DNA. It's flowing through your bloodstream. It's in your red blood cells that this is what you're called to do. And you have to believe that you're called to do that also. And I just wanted to talk about that today because as people, we're not, are we really fulfilling the God-given assignment that He's called us to do on this earth? Or are we ashamed of it? Or we're ashamed of what people think, or we're ashamed of what people may feel. Are we ashamed? And that's one thing that we cannot do. When He's called you and He's placed it on you, and He's anointed you for it, you got to do it. Whatever thing that He's anointed you to do or called you to do,